Assalamualaikum and very good evening. For the introduction, ISO is an international organization for standardization which was founded in 1947. It is a non-governmental international organization and has 165 national standard bodies. In this assignment, we will compare the similarities and the differences between three ISO standards, which is ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001. Clause 4. Context of the organization. 4.1. Understanding the organization and its context. As for ISO 14001, the organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affects its ability to achieve the intended outcome of its environmental management system. For an example, environmental condition, climate change, legal requirement, and social aspects. As for ISO 9001, the organization shall determine its external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and its strategic direction that affects its ability to achieve the intended result of its quality management system. For an example is market condition. Next is ISO 45001. The organization shall determine external and internal issues that are relevant to its purpose and that affects its ability to achieve the intended outcomes of its occupational safety and health management system. For examples, legal requirements, industry standards, labor market conditions, and social aspects. 4.2. Understand the needs and expectations of interested parties for ISO 14001 and ISO 9001 and understand the needs and expectations of workers and other interested parties for ISO 45001. As for ISO 14001, the sub-clause mandates that the organization determine whether the interested parties are crucial to EMS, identify the relevant standards and expectations met by these parties, and ascertain how these needs and expectations become compliance obligations. For ISO 9001, identify interested parties relevant to the quality management system, and then determine the requirements of these interested parties that are relevant to the quality management systems. As for the ISO 45001, the organization will identify any other interested parties essentials to the occupational safety and health management system and then determine the needs and expectations of those workers. It will also evaluate any potential future needs, expectation, regulatory requirements, and other requirements. 4.3. Determining the scope of the environmental management system. Establish the boundaries and applicability of the environmental management system to define its scope. Consider external and internal issues referred to in 4.1. Compliance obligations referred to in 4.2, its organizational units, functions, and physical boundaries, its activities, product, and services, its authority and ability to exercise control and influence. As for the ISO 9001, determining the scope of the quality management system. Define the boundaries and applicability of the quality management system to establish its scope. Consider the external and internal issues referred to in 4.1. The requirements of relevant interested parties referred to in 4.2 and the organization's products and services. As for the ISO 45001, determining the scope of the occupational safety and health management system. Establish the boundaries and applicability of the occupational safety and health management system to define its scope. Consider the external and internal issues referred to in 4.1. Take into account the requirements referred to in 4.2 and consider work-related activities. ISO 14001, Environmental Management System. The organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continuously improve an EMS, including the necessary processes and their interactions, in accordance with the requirements of these international standards, to achieve the intended outcome, such as improving its environmental performance. When creating and maintaining the EMS, the organization must consider the information acquired in 4.1 and 4.2. Next is Quality Management System and its processes, ISO 9001. First, the organization must establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve a quality management system, including the necessary processes and their interactions, in accordance with the requirement of this international standard. Next, the organization must maintain documented information to support the operations of its processes and retain documented information to ensure that the processes are carried out as planned. Next is Occupational Safety and Health System, ISO 45001. The organization shall establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve an occupational safety and health management system, including the necessary processes and their interaction in accordance with the requirement of this document.
Okay, next is clause 5. It's about leadership and commitment. So, for clause 5, leadership, ISO 14001 have similarity with ISO 19001 and ISO 45001. Based on the 5.1, it's about leadership and worker participation. So for example, for ISO 14001 EMS, it's talking about taking accountability for the effectiveness of the environmental management system. And next is ensuring that the environmental policy and environmental objective are established and are compatible with the strategic direction and the context of the organization. Same as ISO 19001 QMS. So talking about taking accountability for the effectiveness of the quality management system. And next is ensuring that the quality policy and quality objectives are established for the quality management system and are compatible with the context and strategic direction of the organization. It's same also for the ISO 45001 for 5.1. It's all about leadership and worker participation. It's also talking about taking over responsibility and accountability for the prevention of work-related injury and ill health, as well as the provision of safe and healthy workplace and activities. It's also ensuring that the OH objectives are established and are compatible with the strategic direction of the organization. Okay, from the previous slide, we know that ISO 14001, ISO 19001 and ISO 45001 have a similarity in the 5.1 in leadership and worker participation, but it also have a different, such as ISO 19001 QMS has different in 5.1.2, not like ISO 14001 have a similarity with ISO 45001 in 5.1.2. So in ISO 19001 QMS, they have a different in 5.1.2 in customer focus. Customer, this talk about the customer and applicable statutory and regulatory requirement determined, understood and consistently met. Okay, next is clause 6. Clause 6 is all about planning. For 6.1.1, they are all three have a similarity. It's all about the general. ISO 40001, ISO 19001 and ISO 45001 have a similarity in 6.1.1. So in ISO 14001, it's talk about the organization should establish, implement and maintain the process needed to meet the requirement. In general, environmental aspect, compliance obligation and planning action, such as the external and internal issue, and the need and the expectation of interest, and the scope of its environmental management system. In ISO 19001, it's about the organization should consider the external and internal issue, also determine risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to. First, like give assurance that the quality management system can achieve its intended outcome. Second, enhance desirable effect. Third, prevent or reduce undesired effect. And fourth, achieve improvement. Next is ISO 45001. It's also the organization should consider the external and internal issue, requirement of interested parties, and determine the risks and opportunities that need to be addressed to. First, such as give assurance the OHS can achieve its intended outcome. Second, to prevent or reduce undesired effect. And third, achieve continual improvement. Next, for clause 6 is 6.1.2. These three ISO has a similarity in 6.1.2 but have a different name. For ISO 14001, 6.1.2 has talked about environmental aspect. For example, that determine the environmental aspect of its activity, product and service that it can control and those it can influence, then their associated environmental process. For ISO 19001, 6.1.2 is talk about the organization plan, such as the action to address these risks or opportunities and how to integrate and implement the action into its quality management system process. For ISO 45001, 6.1.2 is talk about hazard identification. For example, how it's organized, social factor, leadership and future in organization, such as for assessment of risk and other risks, assess OHS risk from the identified hazard wide. So next is 6.1.3 ISO 19001 doesn't have 6.1.3. It's only ISO 14001 and ISO 45001 that have 6.1.3. So in ISO 14001, 6.1.3 is talk about compliance obligations such as determine and have access to the compliance obligation related to its environmental aspect. In ISO 45001, 6.1.3 is talk about determine of legal requirements such as the organisation shall establish to determine how this legal or other requirement apply to organisation and what needs to communicate. Okay, for 6.1.4, ISO 14001 is talk about planning action such as plan significant environment aspect, compliance obligation, and risks and opportunities identified. And also ISO 45001, 6.1.4 is talking about planning to action such as to address these risks and opportunities. Okay, next, ISO 40001, ISO 19001, and ISO 45001 has a similarity in 6.2.1. For example, ISO 14001 6.2.1 is about environmental objective. For example, the organisation should establish environmental objective at relevant function and levels, taking into account the organisation significance. For ISO 19001, it's about quality objective. For example, the organisation should establish quality objective at relevant function, level, and process needed for quality management system, and the organisation should maintain documented information on quality objective. And for ISO 45001, 6.2.1 OH objective is talk about the organisation should establish OH and S object at relevant function and level in order to maintain and continually improve the OH and S performance. So it should be monitored, be communicated, and be updated as appropriate. Okay, next, ISO 14001, ISO 19001, ISO 45001 have a similarity too at 6.2.2, but only ISO 19001 has 6.3. So what is 6.2.2 for ISO 14001? 6.2.2 for ISO 14001 is about planning action to achieve environmental objectives, such as the organisation should determine what will be done, what research will be required, who will be responsible, when it will be completed, and how the result will be evaluated, including the integrated indicators for monitoring progress toward achievement of its measurable environmental object. For ISO 19001, 6.2.2 is about planning action to achieve QNS objective. For example, the organisation should determine what will be done, what resource will be required, who will be responsible, and when it will be completed, and how the result will be evaluated. And for ISO 45001, 6.2.2 is about planning to achieve OH&S objective. For example, the organisation should determine what will be done, what resource will be required, who will be responsible, and when will be completed, and how the result will be evaluated. The same for 3 ISO. But for 6.3, ISO 19001 is only have 6.3. ISO 14001 and ISO 45001 does not have 6.3. So 6.3 is about planning. For ISO 19001, for example, the organisation should consider the purpose of the change and the potential consequences. Next is the integrity of the quality management system. Next, the reliability of the result and the allocation or reallocation of responsibility and authorities.
Now I will talk about Clause 7 support 7.1 resources for ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001. All these three ISO have similarities, which are the organisation shall determine and provide the resources needed for the establishment, implementation, maintenance, and continual improvement. However, the differences are for ISO 14001, it's focused on the environmental management system. For ISO 9001, it focuses on the quality management system. And for the ISO 45001, it focuses on OH and its 7.2 competence. For ISO 14001, the necessity of a person doing work under its control that affect its environmental performance. It's people that are assigned with the responsibilities for the environmental management system should determine and evaluate environmental impact. Next, need to contribute to the achievement of an environmental objective. Next, respond to emergency situation, perform internal audits, and perform evaluation of compliance. For ISO 9001, the necessity of a person doing work under its control that affect the performance and effectiveness of its quality management system, such as training, mentoring, the assignment of currently employed persons, hiring or contracting of competent persons. For ISO 45001, the necessity of workers that affects more can affect its OH&S performance, such as identify hazard on the basis of appropriate education, training, or experience, and where applicable, take action to acquire and maintain the necessary competence, and evaluate the effectiveness of the action taken. Retain appropriate documented information as evidence of 7.3 awareness. For ISO 14001, the organization must make sure that anyone working for it is aware of its environmental policy, key environmental consideration, and any associated actual or potential environmental impacts. This way, they can contribute to the efficiency of the organization environmental management system. For ISO 9001, the organization shall ensure that all working for it are aware of its quality policy, its quality targets, and how they may contribute to the success of its quality management system, including the advantage of better performance. And for ISO 45001, worker must be informed to the OH&S objective and how they can contribute to the success of the OH&S 7.4 communication. For ISO 14001, implement and maintain processes needed for the internal and external communication relevant to environmental management system, which include what, when, with, whom, and how. For ISO 9001, determine internal and external communication relevant to quality management system, which include what, when, with, whom, how, and who. For ISO 45001, implement and maintain processes needed in internal and external communication relevant to OH&S management system, which include what, when, with whom. Next is 7.5 documented information required by international standard. For ISO 14001, it is necessary for the effectiveness of EMS, competence of persons doing work under organization control. For ISO 19001, it's necessary for the effectiveness of QMS and the competence of person. For ISO 45001, it's necessary for the effectiveness of the OH&S management system, competence of workers. Next is Clause 8 Operation. 8.1 Operational Planning and Control. For ISO 14001, the organization shall establish, implement, control, and maintain the process needed to meet environmental management system required and to implement the action identification, control plan changes, and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effects as necessary, and to ensure that outsourced processes are controlled or influenced. For ISO 9001, the organization shall establish, implement, control the process needed to meet the requirements of quality management system for the provision of products and services, and to implement the actions. Next is ensure the output of this planning shall be suitable for the organization operation. Control the plan changes and review the consequences of unintended changes, taking action to mitigate any adverse effect as necessary. And for ISO 14001 and ISO 45001, the organization shall implement, control, and maintain the process needed to meet the requirement of the OH&S management system, and to implement the actions. Establish, implement, and maintain a process for the elimination of hazard and reduction of OH&S risks using the hierarchy of control. 8.2 Emergency Preparedness and Response. For ISO 14001, the organization shall establish, implement, control, and maintain the process needed to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situation. Maintain documented information to the extent necessary to have confidence that the processes are carried out as a plan. For ISO 9001, since this ISO focus more about quality management system that helps organization meet the need of their customer, hence it has requirements for product and services. Different operation for other ISO, which are communication with customers, shall include providing information relating to product and services, determine the requirement for the product and services to be offered to the customers. The organization shall conduct a review before committing to supply products and services to customers. For ISO 45001, the organization shall establish, implement, control, and maintain the process needed to prepare for and respond to potential emergency situation, and to establishing a planned response to emergency situation, including provision of first aid and training. That's for me, thank you.
Hi, my name is Abdul Bin Abdulrazak. So, Clause 9, Performance Evaluation. For the 9.1 is monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluations. For the ISO 14001 is use and maintain calibrated or verified monitoring and measurement equipment. The evaluation of compliance is to establish, implement, and maintain process to evaluate compliance obligation. For the ISO 9001 is to evaluate a performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. For the evaluation of compliance is to understand customer perceptions and fulfillment of the exception. For the ISO 45001 is to evaluate the OH&S management system. For the evaluation compliance is to establish, implement, and maintain the compliance evaluation process. Next, for the internal audit. For the ISO 14001 is to conduct internal audit at planned intervals to check EMS conformity. For the internal audit program is to ensure audit results are reported to relevant management. For the ISO 9001 is to conduct internal audits to ensure QMS conformity. For the internal audit program is to establish and maintain an audit program reporting results to relevant management. For the ISO 45001 is to conduct internal audits to check OH&S management system conformity. For the internal audit program is to report relevant audit results to a worker and interested parties. Next, for the management review. For the ISO 14000 is management review is top management review EMS for suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness. The management review shall include consideration of the status of action from previous management reviews and the extent to which environmental objectives have been achieved. For the ISO 9001 is to the management review QMS for suitability, adequacy, and alignment with strategic direction. For the management review inputs is to review considering previous actions and internal changes. For the management review output is to determine action for the improve and changes to the QMS. For the ISO 45001 is top management review QH&S management system for stability, adequacy, and effectiveness. The management shall include the consideration of the status of action from previous review. Next, for the clause 10 improvement, which is the ISO 14001 is to achieve intent EMS outcome. ISO 9001 is to meet customer requirement and enhance the satisfaction of the customer. And ISO 45001 is to achieve intent OH&S management system outcome. Next, the non-conformity and corrective action, which is for the ISO 14001. First, react the non-conformity, evaluate the need for action, implement any action needed, review the effectiveness of any corrective action taken, and the last one is make changes to the EMS. For the ISO 9001 is first react to the non-conformity, evaluate the need for action, implement any action needed, review the effectiveness of any corrective action taken, and update risks and opportunities determined during the planning, and the last one is make changes to the QMS. For the ISO 45001, first to react the timely manner to incident or non-conformity, evaluate with the participation of workers and the involvement of other relevant interested parties for the corrective action. Review existing assessment, determine and implement any action needed. Assess OH&S risks that relate to the new changes of hazard, and the last one is review the effectiveness of any action. So the last one is a continual improvement. For the ISO 14001 is to continually improve EMS to enhance environmental performance. So for the ISO 9001 is continually improve QMS based on the analysis and evaluation. The organization shall consider the result of analysis and evaluation and the outputs from management review to determine if there are any needs opportunities that shall be addressed as part continual improvement. For the ISO 45001 is enhance OH&S performance, promoting a culture that supports OH&S, promoting the participation of workers, communicating the relevant results of the continual improvement, and the last one is the maintaining and retaining documented information as evidence continual improvement. Thank you.
As for the conclusion, all ISO 14001, ISO 9001, and ISO 45001 share a structured approach to management system that emphasize understanding organizational context, stakeholder demands, and scope definition. They all require strong leadership commitment, strategic planning, and robust support mechanism for successful implementation and continuous improvement. Beside the common framework, each standard has distinct goals. ISO 9001 focuses on quality management, ISO 45001 on occupational safety and health, and ISO 14001 on environmental performance. Organizations can integrate these standards into a unified management system by understanding these similarities and differences. This integration leverages the strength of each standard, leading to operational excellence, compliance, and sustainable development.